Guten Tag. Have you seen mein Freund Hansi? We got lost in the desert, and I'm afraid he has keine beer. It's a wonderschönen Tag, but without Wasser, we won't make it out. I'll wait here in case he makes it back. Auf Wiedersehen. Guten Tag, again. Oh, Hansi is sleeping. Wunderbar. You are lucky I got the map of this desert. I'll explain the way out. Just stay on the right. That is it. Auf Wiedersehen, mein Freund.
Welcome, human. I'm the manager of these halls. If you are wandering these lands looking for employment, then you have come to the right place. We just opened 2 positions. There's a lot of people going through hell these days and the paperwork is stacking up. That's where you come in. You will be taking calls and filling out paperwork. Before you start, you need to go talk with the big man. We are counting on you to make a difference.
I don't see any exemptions for video
it's
games.
doing the thing again.
I'm gonna have to file
Sorry,
under the
I don't
going
remember
to
my
hell
password.
category.
Yes.
No sir, I don't see any exemptions for video games.
Oh, it's doing the thing again. Sorry, I don't remember.
Don't mind me, I'm okay.
Yes.
Oh, I'll be up in just a second. Oh, mind a step, please. Eek, could you give me a hand? Oh, never mind. Hey, I'm laying here.
Yes, I have tried turning it on and off.
Oh, yes, Daddy, step all over me.
Oh, it's doing the thing again.
Don't mind me, I'm okay.
Honestly expect us to believe that.
Sorry, the system is acting up.
Yes.
I've
No
rejected the
sir,
paperwork.
I don't see any exemptions for
I'll have to put you back in queue.
You should be able to walk
I'm
directly
gonna
into
have to
heaven
file
now.
you under the going to hell category.
Have a good day, sir.
No sir, I don't see any exemptions for video games.
Greetings, mortal employee, who breaks down the doors of my office. You are fired. No wait, I changed my mind. You are hired.
You have reached
I
the
am
final hotline. What can I help you with?
CEO Saint Peter. You know, the one who holds the keys to the kingdom of heaven and all that. Anyways, Jesus trusted me to filter out the bad apples. We did used to have a nicer office at the pearly gates, but it's all been outsourced to hell now. The salaries are just much more competitive here. Speaking of which, we pay up front. Congratulations. Also, we do 175-hour work weeks, but we are open to renegotiate your contract in a few decades. Now get to it. I ordain you to fill out paperwork in the name of the Lord. Off to Cubicle 4 with you.
Hello, I've reached the Purgatory Hotline.
No sir,
How
Have a
can I
good
not
day,
help
I
sir.
don't see any exemptions for video games.
I'm afraid we are fully booked. Try calling back in a month.
Hello. This is Bob from Alaska speaking. So I saw your ad on the television set and that's why I'm calling in. Yeah, I'm 56 years old. Just retired this year. So, yay, I went to church every Sunday like I'm supposed to. And, well, I had a stroke yesterday that killed me. Wasn't that fun, you know? But, yay. You know those self-checkout things? I used to occasionally scan a banana when in reality I was buying a donut. I still feel bad about it now. So yay. Any possibility you could send me back? Or maybe it doesn't work like that, never mind. No worries. So, how are your kids doing? Hello? Is any?
You should be able to walk directly into heaven now.
Hello darling, it's me Tiffany. I need to speak with whoever can cancel my death. I'm only 39. Get me your manager please, I need to speak with them. It doesn't matter what god they are. It could be the flying spaghetti monster for all I care. My case is a special one and needs attention from someone more qualified than you. I did not cause this car crash. I don't care if you need to fill out a stupid form. Hello? Send me to the manager, you son of a gun. I have a right to speak to them. I do not need to concern myself with you. Send me your superior. Your resistance is futile. You know, I'm recording this. They will have your head for your cold behavior. I'll sue you. See you in court.
I don't see any exemptions for video games.
홀로 굿이브닝 I did not deserve this 83세의 젊은 나이에 컴퍼니 삼성 재벌 사장으로서 내 불쌍한 영혼은 이제 막 사업의 절정을 맞이하고 있었다. 아침에 소주 25잔으로 나는 더 버브 소주 있는 인간이었다. 우리 회사에서 축적한 매시브 디파트먼트는 내 주제에 대한 중단 요인이 아닙니다.
Congratulations. You have won. You filled out form number 100 billion. Claim your key while you can.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
You have won. You filled out form number 100.
Hello mate, you have reached the final hotline. What can I do you for?
Congratulations.
Hold up.
You have won.
Amazing, you did it. You have proved yourself by processing a very small quantity of paperwork and through pure luck. Here's the key, don't let the door hit you on the way out. I'm sure the other employees won't mind you leaving a few hundred years early.
Congratulations.
Let me think.
No, that's
I'm
the
searching
other
on
line.
the phone.
You'll have to wait.
I don't see
Claim
any
your key while you can.
No.
Nothing I can do on my
I
end.
don't remember my password.
I'm gonna have to file you under going to hell.
Yes, I have tried turning it on and off.
Lord Mortal. I can't really be bothered to sail today. So why don't you grab the wheel? I'm absolutely sure it will be smooth sailing from here on out. Just don't hit the rocks. And look out for primordial beasts, lurking in the deep. Well freak, it's Cthulhu. That blow is a proper prick. What's that tentacle wheel? Oh no, a flip the wheel. Hope you can handle, opposite, inverted, steering. This Squidman really got a problem. Just slap them away with your keyboard. And keep your eyes on the river. Ay, it's gone. Gonna need to have a word with Lucifer. I can't work in these conditions. Finally we have arrived. You can park it over, by the docks. Inner circle is that way.
Greetings presenter slides user. The next session is, next slide please. We need to talk about your performance. Presenter, do not, I hope this CD finds you well. Please, refrain from doing that in the future. User, we may not let you pass from this, we need to talk about your performance. Please, the next session in management training begins now. We need to talk about your performance. User, we may not let you pass from this point on. Please, refrain from doing that in the future. Please, refrain from doing that in the next session in management training. We need to talk about your pass from this point on. Next slide please. User, we may not let you pass from this point on. Presenter, do not make me call an urgent meeting.
The slideshow is now over. Thank you for your attention.
Greetings user, welcome to an academic presentation on presenter slides. I'm Matthias.
And I'm Bryn, and we are the creators and the researchers behind presenter slides.
Next slide please.
We're going to present you a theory that is based upon abusive game design, which was invented by Doug Wilson and Miguel Sicart in 2010. Next slide please. However, before anything else, we want to address the fact that this is called abusive game design. And this just sounds kind of weird in 2022. Next slide, please. And since even the people that made this research paper do not agree with the term anymore, we decided to try to rename it and to call it counter game design. Next, we're trying to rename it because we feel like, one, modern games can sometimes be abusive to the player, and that's what the player wants. Two, because the social understanding of the word what an abusive game is very different today than it was at the start of this abusive game research. And three, because the status quo roots back in 2010 of this term simply meant that they were looking at games that were being abusive, and those games were undermining the mainstream principles. Next slide, please. Because counter game design is about going against the design rooted in mainstream video games. It is about subverting the expectations of what the player will receive. And because expectations in 2010 were different than the expectations in 2022, counter game design is a better term, because it's going to be relevant regardless of what the mainstream design philosophy is.
Yes, so we created a topology while developing this game, and we did a lot of analysis on many games, trying to categorize how to type these different ways of abusing the player and going against going against the design conventions. So we created this typology, and go to the next slide, please. Yes, we created the following meta categories: social, rule, and century, which essentially explain what boundaries are being overstepped. And in the next few slides, we'll explain how they're being overstepped. Next slide, please. Yes, so here we have all the categories that we found. There's, of course, more out there, but these are the ones we could find with examples of games that exist right now and within our own game that we have created. Now let's look at the in-game categories that we have within presenter slides, and then afterwards we can look at the ones that we didn't manage to fit into the game. Next slide, please. Okay, so the first category is platform abuse. For example, you could have the slideshow be slightly tilted all the time. You can press space now to fix that. We encourage you to correct the slideshow. Next slide, please. In presenter slides, we do it, for example, by we sell the game on CD, so players have to go out and buy a disk drive or dust off like an old computer at their parents' place. We throw a bunch of errors and we try to crash the game and make some weird janky interactions with the software itself. Next slide, please. The next category is abuse of sight, which is all about messing with the visual perception of the players. You can do this by flashing lights at them or overloading them with visual information, so it becomes hard to play the game. We, for example, do this in the desert, where there's a bunch of wavy shaders and like it's very pixelated. Yeah. Next slide, please.
Hidden visual information is more or less the opposite of abuse of sight, where in abuse of sight you try to overload the sense. In hidden visual information we try to take away the sense that is actually important at some point in the gameplay. So for example, in again the desert section, you need to find oases and water inside of them, but sometimes we take away your ability, like sometimes you're not able to see if there's actually water in the oasis, and then we mess with this by sometimes having private property signs instead of water inside of the oasis. And as the last category that we will present through the desert, it's attrition abuse. Attrition abuse is when you ask the player to just keep doing the same thing over and over again, to the point where they're probably going slightly mad trying to figure out if this is worth it or not. A prime example of this would be a game like Desert Bus, or, you know, presenter slides, desert section, where you cannot really use your skills to get out. You just have to luck into the correct path, so you have to keep trying. Now try pressing the next slide button. Abuse of touch is when we are using your sense of touch, right? The ability to feel on your skin. We try to abuse this by putting you in the gym, where we're asking you to work out a lot. You must have worked out a lot to come here. I hope you figured it out that you actually don't need to work out. But if you did feel the pain, then good job. That was the abuse of touch. Next slide, please.
The next category is the abuse of hearing, which is another sensory category, where we again overload the senses of people. And in this one, in the call center, for example, we have a bunch of sounds playing that should hopefully trigger some Skype calls, notification sounds and so on, and crashes, and people speaking all around you should be a really uncomfortable office environment. Hope you didn't enjoy it. Next slide, please. The next category is a rule-based one, where we intentionally make the controls of the game infuriating to play. For example, in the boat section, we invert it and we have to hit a bunch of keys on the keyboard, and you can't see anything until you hit them. And in this way, you can sort of make like a frustrating game based on just messing with the controls of the player. Next slide, please.
And lastly is unfriendly difficulty. That's when the game would ask you to do something that the game is clearly not designed for, right? Like it is very hostile towards what it's asking you to do, which doesn't mean like it's not the same thing as like hard, right? Dark Souls is hard, but in Dark Souls your character is designed to fight bosses and do whatever things you're supposed to do there, right? In unfriendly difficulty, we ask you to be pixel precise and like dodge a bullet hell in the greed section that was the Satan boss fight. I'm guessing you're playing this for the second time, so you probably killed Satan before. Good job, you. No, next slide, please.
Okay, so now we leave the safe realm of presenter slides and go outside the game, because there's a bunch of other examples of other games that have made really interesting mechanics using these design principles. So next slide, please.
The next one is social engineering. So this is clearly something we don't do in presenter slides because you, player, are the only person playing it. Go to the next slide. As you might imagine, social engineering is about deceiving each other, and the game encouraging that, right? It's about using the social relations between you and the player, the other players, and the game actively trying to make those relations, you know, at least a tiny bit awkward. An example of this would be EVE Online, right? Like EVE Online is a game where players spy on other players, pretend that they're each other's friends, just for the betterment of like their original corporation that they're working for. It is all about figuring each other out as a player and trying to abuse that.
The next category is again a social one, transgression of taboos. It's when you let's go to the next slide. Next slide, please. As you can see on the slide, it's all about these themes of taboo and sort of instantiating some discomfort between players or with players. So you try to touch topics that are usually not considered okay by society or are considered too much or whatever. And we can use these themes to create game design and make the players think about things, make them uncomfortable. It can be used for a lot of things. Next slide, please. One great example of this is Robert Yang's games, especially the Tea Room, which is used with the purpose of social change or normalizing taboos. It's a game with a highly sexualized game, but at the same time it's also a critique of gun violence. In the game, you play as a man in a bathroom in the 50s in America, and you try to give oral sex to other men without being discovered by the police. So there's both like highly sexualized themes that maybe some very straight players are not comfortable with, but at the same time there's also persecution against gay rights, and it uses the whole taboo rules brilliantly, also by replacing all penises with guns, which are totally normalized and okay in video games. Next slide, please.
So the last sense that we are missing is smell. So yeah, next slide. The abusive smell category is about farts. Next slide, please. But because reproducing scent is so hard and is so inaccessible, this category is, well, because of that, this category is used as a fart joke. Because most of the use cases that we found where games actually try to use smell, everything is such a low-hanging fruit, like South Park's Fractured But Whole, where as a part of their PR campaign, they had some builds of the game where you would play it with a Nosulus Rift, a Oculus Rift for your nose, right? And you would be able to smell the farts that you had to perform quite a lot in the game to proceed. So yeah, when it's possible for us to deliver scent, we apparently choose to deliver farts.
So in this next section, we're gonna talk a bit about some of the things we have learned through creating this game and the theory around it and the research we have done. So yeah, let's jump through to the next slide. First point we would like to discuss is the granularity, the precision of this theory and the categories we have created. As you can see in this Venn diagram, we have the meta categories at the bottom, and within them are contained the regular categories. Some of them overlap, as you can see, but we don't specify how much they overlap or how much they're towards one thing, or if something is more than another, which we believe could be a great way to get more precision in using this model. So we encourage other people to research that in the future. Next slide. Yes. Now we would like to talk about humor. A lot of these games, including our own, that use these principles, rely a lot on humor. But all these mechanics create sort of unpleasant feelings, unpleasant invocations of emotions, and a lot of games diffuse that through humor. But we want to make it clear that this is not the only way to use these mechanics. A lot of other games, especially within psychological horror, use these mechanics to increase the tension. You can build upon the tension, whereas comedy games diffuse it at some point by like, oh, this is a joke, now we can all laugh about it. But we encourage people to also make games that make you feel other things than laughter. Next slide, please.
And I want to talk a little bit about mainstream, like I did at the start, right? What is mainstream? Because we think that Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy is pretty mainstream. And that is a game that is very, very abusive towards the player, right? It is a game that makes you restart your 1 hour of progress from the very beginning. It is a game with very frustrating controls. It is a game where you, the player, are the butt of the joke all the time. It is not a game that is kind. And because abusive game design is supposed to be in the original paper about subverting players' expectations, we don't really think that Bennett Foddy is getting over it is still abusive. Let's look at a set of pictures on the next slide. So we need to understand that getting over it with Bennett Foddy is clearly inspired by sexy hiking, and then getting over it with Bennett Foddy inspired Pogo Stuck, and just like Pogo Stuck, Jump King has also been inspired by getting over it with Bennett Foddy. So you can see a clear pattern here of this like incredibly frustrating, hard to play game, starting out as a case of abusive game design, or rather more correctly as a case of counter game design, as a case of taking conventions and flipping them around. Getting over it with Bennett Foddy took that idea and flipped it on its head, and polished it as much as it could, meaning that it became very, very popular even though it was carrying a counter game design mechanic. Then, Pogo Stop and Jump King already took something that was very popular, right? Getting over it with Bennett Foddy, and riffed off that. At that point, this game has entered the mainstream, so it is hard to say that it's abusing the player when in reality the players are looking for this. This is why, or this is another reason why, we believe that counter game design makes for a better name than abusive game design. So thank you for your attention, dear user, presenter. Next slide. Let's kill abusive game design together. Next slide.
Yes, so I think we can all put abusive game design to rest and accept counter game design. If you want to know more about it, you can contact presenterslides2000@yahoo.com to receive the research paper in your mailbox.
Digital mailbox.
Yes. Thank you, and have a good boss fight.